It was a regular Saturday, the kind where nothing feels wrong, the kind where you think the worst thing that could happen is burning your toast or missing a game. I was in the bathroom doing what people do, and when I came out, I sat down at our home computer to delete something from the browser history. Just something embarrassing I'd searched the night before. Nothing major. I opened the history tab, and that's when I saw it. The first entry stopped me cold. 4:34 p.m. How to stop husband from cheating. I just sat there, my heart doing something I don't have words for. My wife, Sarah, had searched that, while I was apparently somewhere else in the house. And here's the thing that made my stomach drop even further. She wasn't wrong to search it, because for the past 6 months, I had been seeing someone from work. Her name was Amy, and as far as I knew, Sarah had absolutely no idea. We had been careful. No texts, calls only. I deleted everything. There was no way she knew. So how? I kept scrolling. 4:37 p.m. How much does divorce cost? Okay, so she was thinking about leaving me. My hands were sweating. Part of me felt like I deserved it, but I kept reading because I couldn't stop. 4:39 p.m. Why do humans feel emotions? That one threw me. Of all the things to search after divorce cost, why that? Why would someone who just discovered their husband was cheating suddenly pivot to philosophy, biology? I pursed my lips and scrolled down, and then a drop of blood landed on the keyboard. I looked up at the ceiling first. That's always the instinct, right? Nothing there. Then I felt it, that metallic smell. I touched my face, and my palm came back red, a nosebleed out of nowhere. I'd never gotten one in my adult life. I scrambled for the bathroom, hands cupped under my nose, blood dripping between my fingers onto the hardwood floor. When I came back, I almost didn't want to look at the screen again, but I did. 4:44 p.m. Which part of the brain is responsible for love? 4:49 p.m. What is excerebration? I didn't know that word. I typed it in without even thinking about it. And I genuinely wish that I hadn't, because what came up on that screen made my stomach lurch so hard I almost gagged. The images were graphic. I hit the back button immediately. But one sentence in bold had already burned itself into my brain. An ancient procedure involving chiseling through the nasal cavity to scoop out brain matter. I sat completely still. I kept scrolling. 5:01 p.m. Can a person live without the hypothalamus? 5:05 p.m. Location of the hypothalamus. 5:11 p.m. How much temazepam is safe? I was so deep in it that I didn't even hear the front door open. Honey, I'm home. I froze. My body went cold from the neck down. I didn't move. I couldn't figure out what to say, how to start the sentence, how to even look at her. Hello? Her heels clicked across the floor toward the office. You okay in here? Hey. Yeah, hey. I choked out, shoving the tissue box into the desk drawer. She appeared in the doorway, smiling. Beautiful. Normal, my wife. You had quite a night last night, she said with a little laugh. I did? She tilted her head, studied me. You feeling all right? I pointed at the screen. My index finger was visibly shaking. What is all this? She came over to look, frowning slightly. Then her cheeks went pink. 2 little spots of color, like she'd been caught doing something slightly embarrassing. Oh, she said, waving her hand like it was nothing. Well, you said we could try it. I just had to do some research, you know. What? I said we could try. What exactly? The essence, something, she said breezily. You probably know the word better than I do. My blood went cold. The excerebration. Sarah, I said slowly, what did you do? But before she could answer, I felt something warm on my upper lip. I looked down, a drop of blood, then another, then something else. Something small and soft and absolutely wrong hit the front of my shirt and rolled to the floor. We both stared at it. Neither of us moved for a full 3 seconds. Then Sarah screamed. She turned and ran for the door, and I caught up to her, grabbing her by the shoulders, pinning her against the wall. Blood was streaming down my face, dripping off my chin onto her blouse. I know how this looked. I know, but I needed an answer. Tell me what you did. She was writhing, trying to get away. How do you not remember? You came home after work and said you were leaving me for Amy. You said you didn't even want to love her, but you did. So we got drunk. We got really drunk. And then you brought it up. You said there was something in the brain, the hypothalamus, and if it was removed, you could stop loving her. You said you wanted to fix us. I let that sink in, or tried to. Wait, I said quietly. Something felt wrong. Not just wrong. Off. Like a word you've said so many times, it stopped sounding real. Who's Amy? Sarah stared at me. The name rang a bell, somewhere far back, like an echo from another room. Amy, Amy. I knew that name. I could feel that I knew it, but I couldn't reach it. It was like grabbing at smoke. What do you mean, who's Amy? She whispered. I don't know, I said, and I crumpled to the floor. I don't remember. Sarah went very still above me. Her blouse was covered in blood. Her mouth was a thin line. I watched her eyes fill up. Honey, she said finally. Her voice had changed completely. Soft, careful, the way you talk to someone standing on a ledge. What if I accidentally hit the wrong part? What do you mean the wrong part? There's something called the hippocampus, she said. I was trying to get the hypothalamus, but the diagrams were confusing and... Sarah, what is the hippocampus? She started sobbing. Honey, she said, you're a doctor. You know what it is. It's the memory center of the brain. I just looked at her, and that's when everything I thought I was started to come apart. I don't know what I've lost. I don't know how much is gone, or if it's coming back. I remember my name. I remember this house. I remember Sarah's face. But there are gaps. Soft, dark gaps, where something used to be. I can feel the shape of them, like rooms with the furniture moved out. And somewhere in one of those gaps is a woman named Amy, whose face I can't find anymore. I still don't know if that's a mercy or a horror. I was 6 years old. It changed everything, and I'm still not sure whether it was a miracle or something I'm not supposed to understand. Growing up, home wasn't safe. My dad had a temper that filled every room before he even opened his mouth. You'd feel it in the air, that shift, like the pressure dropping before a storm. And my mum, she wasn't much of a shield. She'd sit in the kitchen with her cigarettes and let the storm blow through. We lived way out in the sticks. No neighbors close enough to hear anything. No one to run to. So I learned to survive a different way. I learned to disappear. Closets, the space behind the dryer, a gap under my bed that I'd wedge into just right so I could still breathe, but no one could see me. I was small for my age, and I used every inch of it. I was a master at hiding, but it wasn't a game. It was survival. And then one October night, I decided to try something different. I could hear it starting, the way his voice changed, low and sharp, like something cracking. Mom wasn't helping. She never did. And I knew, the way you just know when you've heard it enough times, that tonight was going to be bad. But a few days before, I'd noticed something. The lattice panel along the bottom of the back porch had a hole in it, not big enough for a grown man, but just big enough for a skinny 6-year-old with a blanket and a stuffed hippo named Gerald. So I slipped out my window into the dark, into 40-degree air in the middle of autumn, in my pajamas. I crawled under the porch on my elbows, getting splinters in my palms, mud on my knees. But once I was in, it was actually kind of spacious. I wrapped my blanket around me, pulled Gerald close, and that's when I realized how cold I really was. My teeth were chattering so hard I could barely breathe, but going back inside meant risking getting caught, so I pressed in tighter and tried to tough it out. Honey, are you cold? I froze. That voice, it wasn't my mum, nothing like my mum. It was soft, like warm tea with honey in it. I turned over slowly and saw the outline of a woman lying on her stomach beside me. In the dark, in the mud. She had a pretty butterfly necklace, and she was watching me with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me before. Gentle, calm, like she wasn't scared of anything. I wasn't even afraid, and looking back, I probably should have been. She opened her arms, and I just crawled into them, and the cold stopped, just like that, like sitting next to a fire that couldn't burn you. She stroked my hair, and she said, "You've gotten so big. How old are you now, Alex?" I told her I was 6, and she gasped like it was the best news she'd ever heard. "6? You're all grown up then. What's your name?" I asked her. "I'm Lily," she said. "What's your favorite thing to do?" And we just talked like it was the most normal thing in the world. Board games, coloring. She said she loved Scrabble, said she could never get enough of it, and she laughed, this soft, warm laugh, when I told her I wanted to learn but didn't know enough words yet. She said, "Maybe someday we can play together." And then her voice got quieter. "Alex, I need you to do something for me. In the morning, when your daddy's gone to work, I need you to go to the police station. Ask for an officer named Sheriff Lowell Joyce. Tell him Lily is under the back porch. Can you do that for me?" I said yes immediately. She seemed relieved, but her voice caught a little at the end, and I was too young to understand why. She wished me good night, and I fell asleep in the mud, warm as a summer afternoon, in the arms of a woman I'd just met. When I woke up, I didn't see her anymore, but I heard her, "Go now. Your dad's gone to work. I'll guide you." And she did. Every corner, every crossing, one tiny voice pointing the way, step by step, until I stumbled through the doors of the police station, looking like something dragged out of the earth. The officers almost didn't see me until I was right up at the front desk. One of them knelt down, eyes wide. "Whoa, kid, you okay?" I nodded. "I need to speak to Sheriff Lowell Joyce," I said. I still remember the look on his face when he sat down across from me. Gray mustache, deep-set eyes, and a stillness like he'd learned a long time ago how to stay calm when things got strange. "Hey kid, I'm Sheriff Joyce. What's your name?" "Alex." I looked him straight in the eye. "A woman named Lily told me to find you. She's under the back porch of my house. You need to go get her so we can play Scrabble." I had never seen a grown man go pale before. I don't remember everything that came after. Flashing lights, police cars in the driveway, yellow tape going up around the back porch, my dad in handcuffs, and a black bag being carried away. I went to live with my grandparents after that, Sheriff Joyce and his wife, and for the first time in my life, I felt safe. He took me to movies and let me get the giant soda, even though I'd have to pee halfway through. He let me paint my bedroom whatever color I wanted. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand. And my grandmother taught me how to cook, how to stand up for myself, and how to make a birthday cake from scratch by the time I was 12. I asked about Lily a few times over the years. Always got shut down. "You're too young," they'd say. On my 16th birthday, Grandpa drove me back to the old property. It had been bulldozed, flattened to dirt. A few trees still had faded yellow tape wound around them like old wounds. We sat on the back of his truck. He opened a beer, set an orange soda down for me, and then he told me, "Lily was your mother." The world stopped for a second. "Your real mother, the woman living with your father, she wasn't her." He took a long breath. His hands were shaking a little. "Lily was my daughter. When you were 6 months old, she disappeared. We didn't know what happened. We looked for years. I felt sick." He put her under the porch. Grandpa stared out at the flattened earth. They'd gotten into a fight. He threw her down the stairs. She broke her neck. He buried her under the porch and told everyone she'd left. He clenched his fists around the beer can. I always knew he had something to do with it, but I had no proof. Not until a 6-year-old boy walked into my station, covered in mud, and told me exactly where to find her. My voice barely came out, but I saw her. She kept me warm. She talked to me. She had a butterfly necklace. Grandpa reached into his jacket and pulled out a small evidence bag. The butterfly necklace was inside. rusted, chipped, but unmistakable. My eyes overflowed. Alex, his voice cracked. When they found her, she'd been gone a long time. The experts confirmed it. She was bones by the time we dug her up. I couldn't breathe. She'd been dead the entire night she was with you. I don't know how long I sat there, crying, clutching that little bag against my chest. Grandpa put his arm around me and held on tight. I felt a few of his tears land on top of my head. And then, for just a moment, brief as a held breath, I felt it again, that warmth, that exact warmth from under the porch, the one that had no business being there on a 40-degree October night. I don't know what Lily was that night. I don't know what kept her there, in the cold, in the mud, next to a child who didn't even know her name. I don't know what love looks like on the other side of death, but I know what it felt like, and I carry it with me every single day. It started like any other Friday. 4 of us crowded around Jake's coffee table. Me, Marcus, Sophie, and Jake himself, deep into what had to be the most ruthless game of Monopoly any of us had ever played. Sophie was winning, obviously. She always wins. Marcus was rolling the dice like he was praying to some ancient god, muttering under his breath, begging for a 4. He didn't get it. I could tell by the way he said nothing at all. I wasn't really paying attention to the game at that point. My phone had done something strange. One word, black text on a plain white background, just sitting there staring at me. HID. I tapped at the screen. Nothing happened. I held down the power button. Nothing. Sophie called me out for being on my phone during the game. She has this teacher voice she pulls out when she's annoyed. And I made some half-hearted apology and set the dice rolling before sneaking another look. Still there. Then the apartment shook. Not dramatically, just once. A single tremor, like someone had dropped something massive in the unit above us. And then the TV just cut off, mid-scene. Netflix gone, replaced by that soft dead hiss of static before the screen went black. Jake went over to fiddle with the cables. Marcus made a joke. And I was still staring at that word on my phone. Then I heard Sophie say, "The heck is this?" And I looked up to see her turning her phone around. Her screen, same white background, same black text, same word. Marcus grabbed his phone off the counter and held it up without saying anything. Same thing. That's when my stomach dropped. Because this wasn't a glitch on one device, this was something else entirely. Jake turned on the TV again, and there it was on the 60-inch screen, bigger than it had any right to be. Each ID. None of us said anything for a second, then Marcus broke it. "Is that like an Amber Alert?" "Amber Alerts don't brick your entire phone," Jake said. I walked to the balcony, slid the door open, stepped out into the night air, and looked out across the city from Jake's 14th floor apartment, and I saw it immediately. Every window in the buildings across from us, every phone, every laptop, every TV screen visible through the unshuttered units, all of them showing the same thing, same background, same word, people frozen in their apartments, just staring at their devices. Whatever this was, it wasn't just our block. Sophie was the one who said it out loud. Should we actually do it? Should we hide? Jake laughed. Kind of. We're literally in an apartment. Where are we going to hide? But she was already moving. Sophie always acts on gut first and explains later, and right then, her gut was telling her something the rest of us weren't ready to hear. She moved through Jake's place carefully, checking corners, opening doors, and finally landed on the sliding closet in his bedroom. "I know it's small," she said, "but I think this is the spot." Jake was uncomfortable. Marcus looked like he was watching a social experiment. I stood somewhere between them, trying to decide whether I believed something was actually wrong, or if we were all about to feel very stupid. "Here's the deal," Sophie said, already stepping into the closet. "You can laugh at me forever if nothing happens. That's the deal. Win-win." She disappeared behind Jake's hanging shirts, and honestly, that was enough. Marcus went first, then me, then Jake, who cursed under his breath the whole way in. The door slid shut, and it was dark and cramped and it smelled like Jake's cologne, and it felt absolutely ridiculous. We sat there for a while. The clock on the wall ticked. Someone's knee was in someone else's back. Marcus started whispering about some camping trip from 3 years ago. Sunlight Grove, this sad little patch of trees upstate, where Sophie had convinced herself there were bears in the bushes. There weren't bears. There were no bears at Sunlight Grove. But she'd made us run anyway, and we'd laughed about it the whole drive home. We were laughing about it now too, quietly, because what else could you do when you're crammed into your friend's closet at 11 at night because your phones told you to? And then the laughter stopped. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't a sound exactly. It was more like a pressure, the kind of silence that isn't really silence. It's silence with weight behind it, like the air in the room had changed, like something was standing right outside the closet door and just waiting. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. I felt a sting in my ears, like the pop you get when a plane drops altitude, and then it was gone. Whatever it was, it passed. I looked at my phone. The word was gone. Just my regular home screen glowing back at me. Nobody said anything for a long time after we slid that door open. We all felt it. We all knew we weren't imagining it, and we didn't have words for what we'd just sat through. Jake went to answer a knock at his door. His neighbor from down the hall, Monica, had been out there trying to reach people, worried about her phone, worried about the message. We could hear her through the door. Jake looked through the peephole, and then he just stood there. He started. He couldn't finish. I looked for myself. The hallway. Monica. I'm not going to describe it in detail. I can't. But whatever had been standing outside that closet, it hadn't passed her by. I felt my phone buzz. Again. And this time, none of us argued. Jake suggested we split up. 2 under the bed. 1 in the utility closet. 1 in the laundry closet. Better odds if we weren't all in the same spot. The logic was grim, but it was logic. I took the utility closet, reached for the door. The latch was broken. It wouldn't click shut. I called for Jake in a whisper, then stopped myself. If something was already in the apartment, I'd just given away my location. I gripped the handle from the inside and held the door shut myself, palm sweating, hand shaking, breathing as quietly as I could. The silence came again. That same crushing weight, and something tried the door. Not hard, almost gentle. A light tug, testing. I held firm and didn't pull back. Didn't want to make it obvious someone was home. Just held. My whole body was shaking. And then the presence passed. I waited 15 seconds. Checked the phone. Again was gone. Ravi came out of the laundry closet first, visibly emotional. He grabbed my arm. The door, your door. I heard you call for me. I didn't come, and I panicked, and I thought, we're alive, I said. That's it. That's all that matters right now. Marcus and Sophie crawled out from under the bed. All 4 of us just stood there in Jake's bedroom, looking at each other. I can't explain the feeling. Gratitude isn't big enough a word. It was more like shock that a feeling this big could fit inside a human chest. Then my phone buzzed again. Break time. I showed the others. Sophie almost laughed. Almost. We moved into the living room together and tried to make sense of things. Marcus pulled up Twitter. I found a live soccer broadcast on TV, or what was left of it, fixed camera angle, a full stadium. I turned it off immediately. A news anchor had gone live from under his desk. He managed a few seconds. He said the carnage was extensive, that he'd survived so far, that he strongly recommended, and then his broadcast was cut off by the new word on screen. Seek. The TV cracked and shattered. So did 3 of our 4 phones. Jake's was somewhere in the apartment. He'd lost it earlier in the evening, like he always does. We needed to find it, and then something else happened during the search, something I'm still not totally comfortable thinking about. The break time message. It wasn't just a break from whatever was hunting us. It was doing something to us. I started looking at Marcus and feeling certain, deeply, bone-level certain, that he knew more than he was letting on, that something was off about him, Sophie too, even Jake. The paranoia wasn't a creeping feeling. It arrived fully formed, like someone had installed it. Sophie figured it out before any of us completely lost it. She held up the message on her cracked screen and said, calmly, "It's overriding us. It's flooding us with something that isn't ours. And real as it feels, we can't fall to it." The four of us stood there in a standoff for what felt like a long time, and then, like a switch flipped, it was just gone. The paranoia dissolved. The room went quiet in a different way, the kind of quiet that's just quiet. Jake found his phone under the Monopoly money, his side of the board, because he'd been winning all night. The message on it was already there. Smile. We had seconds. We smiled. Wide, hollow, terrified smiles. Marcus came in through the front door just in time, took one look at our faces, and mirrored us without even knowing why. God bless him for that. He saved his own life with that instinct. The word disappeared, and then the next message came. Point to sacrifice. A timer underneath it, already ticking down from 1:45. I told them. We all read it. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then we all spoke at once. Hero said something about his family, his parents, his siblings, and it hit the rest of us too. Everyone we'd ever known, gone, probably. And here we were, still breathing, because we'd listened to a word on a phone screen and climbed into a closet. Sophie pointed at herself first, said she flipped the board on the whole thing. Marcus did the same, Jake, then me, but I stopped them. Walked to the front door, opened it, pointed to the hallway, to Monica. She didn't know what was happening, I said. She knocked on this door, trying to find help, and whatever this was, it found her first. Her death gave us time. That's a sacrifice. That counts. I almost looked up when I said it, like something might be listening. Lingvite 5, Lingvite 4, the others pointed with me. Nobody had the right words. Some combination of sorry and thank you came out. Not poetic, not planned, just true. Nothing came. Jake's phone screen went back to his home screen, a picture of a borzoi. He doesn't own one. He just loves that breed. I'd made fun of him for it 100 times, and I have never in my life been so happy to see a dog photo. We stood in the hallway for what felt like 10 minutes. Then we walked back inside, single file, and sat back down at the Monopoly board. I picked up the dice. I rolled a 10. I counted out the squares. Short line railroad. Sophie asked if I wanted to buy it. I thought about it for too long. Sure, I said. My dad sealed himself inside an underground bunker in early 2020. Said the world was ending. Said we were blind if we couldn't see it coming. My sister Rachel and I stood there in the rain that day, watching him disappear through that heavy steel door, and neither of us said the right thing to stop him. He wasn't a good father. I want to be honest about that, but he was still our dad, and somewhere beneath all the conspiracy theories and the stockpiles and the shortwave radio, there was a man who used to take us fishing on Sunday mornings. I still don't know what happened to that man. He bought the land years before I was born, out in the desert, miles from anything. The only reason he wanted it was because of what came with it, an old military installation, abandoned sometime in the 60s, a relic from another era of paranoia. I guess that appealed to him. For most of my childhood, weekends meant driving out to that bunker, watching him patch concrete walls, rotate canned goods, test the generator. Mom left eventually. Can't blame her. And when COVID hit, he finally had his reason, his moment. The thing he'd been waiting for his whole life had arrived. We set up an old radio so he could check in. He didn't trust cell phones, thought they were tracked. Most months we'd hear from him once, sometimes less. And then, 3 months of silence, nothing, just static. That's when Rachel called me. We drove out on a Thursday. It was over 100 degrees, and the desert heat coming off the asphalt made everything look like it was melting. Neither of us said much. I think we both already knew something was wrong. We just weren't ready to say it out loud yet. We arrived after dark. His truck was parked under a tarp, exactly where he always left it. The wind had picked up, carrying fine sand that stung your face if you weren't careful. Rachel and I clicked on our flashlights and walked to the bunker entrance, carved into the side of a low rocky cliff. I banged on the steel door, hard, over and over, yelled his name until my throat hurt. Nothing. I had the spare key, the only spare key that existed, so I used it. The smell hit us before the darkness did. It was the smell of rot, of something that had been dead for a long time in an enclosed space with no air moving. I didn't explain that to Rachel. I just told her to cover her nose and stay close. We went down the spiral staircase, single file, flashlights cutting through the black. The stairs creaked under every step. At the bottom, I tried the light switch. Nothing. The batteries were dead, and they only went dead if nobody had been riding that old exercise bike to charge them. Which meant, I told myself, the generator could be broken. I almost believed it. The corridor stretched ahead of us, long and low. I remembered running through it as a kid, arms out, pretending I was a fighter pilot. Now it just felt like a throat, like we were walking into something that was going to swallow us whole. At the end of the corridor, the Confederate flag hung on the wall, pale in the flashlight beam, faded, sad. Exactly like I remembered it. I didn't say anything about it. Neither did Rachel. We'd had that argument 100 times already, and this wasn't the moment for it. We stepped into the main chamber. It was a mess, empty cans everywhere. Food cans, beer cans, scattered across the floor, like he'd just stopped caring at some point. We stepped carefully through the debris, flashlights sweeping the room, and then Rachel stopped. "Look at the table," she said. I looked. My stomach dropped. The table was set for 3 people. 3 plates, 3 glasses, 3 sets of silverware, laid out neatly in the middle of all that chaos, like someone was expecting company. We stood there in silence for a moment, neither of us wanting to say what we were both thinking, and then something fell in one of the back rooms, a dull thud in the dark. I called out for Dad. Nothing. Rachel grabbed my arm, whispered, "Something is wrong, Josh. Something is really wrong." And then I saw it, on the far wall of the chamber, behind a stack of shelving. Dad had hacked through a layer of concrete, and behind it was a door. Old, rusted metal, standing slightly open. A warm, stale breeze drifting out from the darkness beyond it. This was what he'd mentioned in his last radio call, the hidden door, the one he was going to explore. I pried it open the rest of the way. Rachel was crying now, quietly, asking me to stop, asking me to just call the police and leave, but I had to know. I needed to understand what had happened here. I couldn't walk away without knowing. Behind the door was a small room, barely the size of a closet, and in the center of the floor, a hole, perfectly circular, dropping straight down into absolute darkness. I leaned over it with my flashlight. Nothing, no bottom, just black. Rachel picked up a can and dropped it in. We listened. It bounced off the walls as it fell, and then the sound just faded, like the hole went on forever. The air coming up from it was warm. Rachel pulled me back from the edge, begged me to leave, and I almost did. I almost listened to her. Instead, I turned and walked toward the back hallway, telling myself I just needed 1 more minute. I just needed to check the other rooms. I found him almost immediately. There were feet visible in the hallway. I ran toward them, calling his name. Rachel followed, not wanting to be left alone in the dark. But it wasn't Dad. I screamed before I even consciously understood what I was seeing. It was a body, a man, half decomposed, and the face, what was left of it, was mine. My face, my nose, my jaw, my hairline, my ears, staring up at nothing with a bullet hole between its eyes. Rachel grabbed me before I fell. She was shaking, crying and shaking so hard I could feel it. And then she whispered, "How is this possible? Josh, it's you." We ran, or tried to, stumbled through the debris, crashing into shelves and chairs, desperate to get to the exit. And that's when we heard it, a voice, echoing from the darkness. "Josh." It was Dad's voice, clear as anything. "Is that you, son? I need your help. I'm stuck under a shelf." We froze. Rachel looked at me. I looked at her. We both knew what we'd just found in that hallway. We both knew those batteries were dead. We both knew the timeline didn't add up, and still, it was his voice. I told Rachel to go back up to the surface, get to the car, wait for me. And before she could argue, I was already moving back down the hallway. I don't know why. Even now, I don't fully understand it. Maybe some part of me still needed him to be okay. Needed him to be that man from the Sunday fishing trips. I stepped over my own corpse and kept moving. I found him at the end of the hallway, past the small bathroom. He was sitting on the old composting toilet. His gun had fallen from his hand, but was still looped around his trigger finger. And the wall behind him told me everything. He had been dead for a long time. His journal was in his lap, covered in blood. I took it with shaking hands, and from somewhere deeper in the bunker, his voice kept calling, "Come on, Josh. I need your help, son. Come on." Then Rachel screamed. I ran back to the main chamber and found her standing in the corner, staring at something on the floor. She hadn't made it back to the stairs. She was frozen, hands over her mouth, making a sound I'd never heard from her before. Curled in the corner was a body, a woman. Her neck bent at an angle that a neck should never bend. And Rachel was right. It was her. We didn't speak. We didn't explain it to each other. We just ran. Dad's voice followed us all the way up the stairs, calling my name, asking for help, patient and calm and steady and wrong. We made it to the car. We drove away without looking back. We haven't talked about going to the police. We haven't talked about much of anything, actually. Rachel has been staying with me since that night, and we circle around what we saw, the same way you circle around a hole in the floor you know you might fall into. Last night I finally opened the journal. Most of it was what you'd expect. Conspiracy theories, supply lists, radio frequencies. I flipped through all of it until I got to the final pages. Short entries, quick notes, like he was writing fast. Found a hidden door, deep pit, warm air, might be an old government project. Rachel and Josh showed up. Didn't hear them come in. Strange. Set the table for dinner. Something is off about them. Something is wrong. It isn't them. God help me. I shot one of them. Hiding now. This is probably my last entry. And then the last line, in handwriting so shaky, it was barely readable. I never got the other one. She's still out there. I only had one bullet left. I set the journal down. I'd been sitting here for a few minutes, reading that last line over and over. From the kitchen, Rachel just called to me. Her voice sounds normal. She sounds happy, actually. Cheerful, in a way she hasn't been since before we went to the bunker. "Josh," she called. "Come here. I want to show you something." I'm still sitting here. I haven't answered her yet. I am not the kind of person who scares easily. I've been with Sarah since we were 6 years old. 6. We grew up on the same street, went to the same schools, argued over the same dumb movies, and somehow ended up falling in love. It sounds like something out of a cheesy rom-com, I know, but that was us. That was real. We moved in together 3 years ago, and every single morning I woke up thinking I was the luckiest guy alive. We talked about getting married. We talked about having kids. We had inside jokes that went back 20 years. I knew her better than I knew myself. Or at least, I thought I did. Because 4 nights ago, something changed, and I still don't fully understand what I saw. It started on a completely normal night. We had dinner, watched something on Netflix, went to bed, nothing unusual. I was deep in a dream. I don't remember what it was about, but I know I was dreaming when I heard her voice, right next to my ear, quiet, almost careful. Knock, knock, knock. I opened my eyes. Sarah was sitting up in bed, looking down at me. Her hand was in my hair, moving slowly, gently, like she was trying to wake me the soft way. I checked the clock on the dresser, 3:27 a.m. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked. She just looked at me, same soft expression, and she said it again. Knock, 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 knock. I blinked at her, still half asleep. "Sarah, what is it? What do you need?" She paused. Then, like she'd been waiting for something. She said, "Please answer the joke, honey. Knock, 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 knock." I laughed a little. I didn't know what else to do. "Fine," I said. "Who's there?" Her smile widened, slowly, and she said, "Not me, so don't answer the door." I just stared at her. "That's the joke?" "Yes," she said. "Thank you for answering." And then she laid back down, pulled the blanket over herself, and went to sleep, just like that. I lay there in the dark for a while, trying to figure out what had just happened. Eventually I closed my eyes and told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was half asleep herself. Maybe it was some weird midnight humor I didn't get yet. But the next morning, something felt off. I was brushing my teeth when it came back to me. The clock, 3:27. The way she smiled, I almost convinced myself it was a dream. But when I brought it up at breakfast, Sarah looked at me, and just for a second, that same smile crossed her face, small, knowing, and I realized it had definitely happened. She told me it was nothing, wouldn't say anything else, and I let it go, because I had work, and because it was Sarah, my Sarah. Then it happened again the next night. Knock, knock, knock. I was awake before she finished, and this time she wasn't touching me. She was just sitting there in the dark, eyes open, watching me, blinking slower than normal. The clock said 3:27, same minute, same second. I asked her what she was doing. She didn't answer, just repeated it. Knock, knock, knock. Something about the way she said it made the back of my neck go cold. It wasn't playful anymore. Her voice was flat, even, like she was reciting something. I answered the joke again, just to make it stop. "Not me," she said, "so don't answer the door." Same words, same answer. And then she laid back down. I didn't sleep after that. We talked about it the next day, or tried to. She was evasive in a way she'd never been with me before. She said it was nothing. She said she didn't want to talk about it, and I, stupidly maybe, decided not to push. I called my friend Derek, a therapist, told him everything. He didn't seem too alarmed, said it could be some kind of parasomnia, sleepwalking. We made an appointment for the following week. I just had to get through a few more days. That night, she did it again. This time I tried ignoring her. I kept my eyes shut, regulated my breathing, pretended to be asleep. She didn't stop. Knock, knock, over and over. Patient, quiet, unbroken. I finally sat up and looked at her. She wasn't smiling. She was staring at me with her mouth slightly open, eyes wider than they should have been, blinking slow, and still saying it. Knock, knock, like a recording, like something running on a loop inside her that she couldn't turn off. I answered her, just to end it. She closed her eyes and went to sleep. I went downstairs and sat on the couch until morning. The night after that, she promised me it wouldn't happen again. She made my favorite meal. She was warm and funny and completely herself. I actually started to feel stupid for being scared. This was Sarah, the girl I'd known my whole life. I went to sleep in our bed. At 3:27 a.m., I heard her voice. Just the single word, over and over. Knock. I didn't look at her this time. I just answered, "Who's there?" "Not me," she said quietly, "so don't answer the door." And I went back to sleep, because what else was I going to do? The next night I tried sleeping on the couch. I figured maybe distance would help. Maybe she wouldn't follow me down there. I don't know what time it was when I felt it, that specific feeling of being watched. The kind that pulls you out of sleep before you even understand why. I opened my eyes. Sarah was standing above me in the dark, her face inches from mine, eyes wide, pupils blown out, completely still, not saying anything, just watching me breathe. I lurched back so hard, I almost fell off the couch. "Sarah, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She didn't move. She just kept looking at me, through me, like I wasn't even there. And then I heard it, knocking on the front door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. I looked at Sarah. I looked at the door. I didn't understand. Then a voice came from the other side of it. A woman's voice. "Jason, Jason, can you hear me? Open the door, please. Jason, please, open the door." My stomach dropped, because that voice was Sarah's voice, coming from outside the door. And Sarah was standing right in front of me, "I'm begging you, Jason," the voice cried. "Open the door. She's not me. I swear to God, she's not me." I turned back to look at the Sarah in my living room. She was smiling, wide, wrong, like the expression was too big for her face. And then I don't remember anything else. I woke up in our bedroom, alone. The clock read 4:21 a.m. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't stop them. I don't know how I got upstairs. I don't know if I opened the door. I'm typing this on Sarah's laptop because my phone is downstairs, and I can't make myself go down there. The hallway is dark, in a way that doesn't feel right, like the dark itself is leaning toward me, and I can hear something below, a faint sound, like scratching. I don't know what's in my house right now. I don't know which one of them is real. I don't know if I made the right choice. I just know that whatever is scratching downstairs, it's getting closer. Something is coming, and the people who know about it have been told to stay quiet. I'm a NASA astronomer. I've spent my career mapping the universe, measuring distances between stars, watching the sky with instruments most people will never know exist. And I need to tell you something I was never supposed to say out loud, because if I don't tell someone, I think I might lose my mind holding it in. It started in 1993. The Hubble Space Telescope picked up something strange. A star just went dark. Not an explosion, not a supernova. It didn't collapse or fade the way dying stars normally do. It simply switched off, like someone had reached across the cosmos and turned out a light. Over just a few minutes, gone. We told ourselves it was probably a dust cloud drifting in between us and the star, blocking our view. We filed it away. We moved on. But then something happened in 2007 that we couldn't explain away so easily. 2 more stars disappeared. These 2 were locked together in a binary system, orbiting each other at close range. Now, here's why that matters. If a dust cloud had blocked them, both stars would have vanished at almost exactly the same time. Instead, one faded out. Then 8 hours later, the other one followed, individually, separately, like something had moved between them, something deliberate. And these stars were 15 light years closer to Earth than the one that went dark back in '93. We went back through years of Hubble images and found 2 more. One in 1995, one in 2002, all in the same region of space, a small neighborhood of stars, only a handful of light years apart. And they were all going out, one by one, in sequence. Whatever was doing this was moving, fast, close to the speed of light. That's when we stopped calling it a dust cloud. When the James Webb Space Telescope came online, one of the very first things we did was point it at those dead stars. The official story is that JWST is still in testing. That's not the full truth. We've been collecting data since early February, and what we found changed everything. The stars weren't gone. Their mass was still there. Gravitational wave detectors confirmed it, but the light was completely, utterly gone, and something else had appeared, a kind of structure, thin, thread-like filaments of material stretching between the dead stars across distances of multiple light years, like a web, like something had been built out there in the dark between suns. We ran a mass spectrometry analysis on the nearest point in the system, the binary stars that vanished in 2007. The readings came back wrong, not wrong like a calibration error, wrong like the laws of physics we thought we understood didn't fully apply to what we were looking at. Most of the material had no match in any element we've ever catalogued, no known chemical signature. The structures were cold, almost as cold as the vacuum of space itself. Whatever had covered those stars had smothered their light completely. Among the few familiar elements we did detect were hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and magnesium, ingredients we recognized, but none of us understood why until later. The leading theory at first was Dyson shells, megastructures wrapped around stars to harvest their energy, a concept scientists had theorized about for decades. Some of us were excited. We thought we'd finally found proof of intelligent life beyond Earth. We thought this was the discovery of the century. We had no idea what we were actually looking at. Less than a month ago, JWST detected a massive burst of energy at the edge of a star system, about 12 light-years from that binary pair. We focused the telescope. What we found were explosions, enormous ones, thermonuclear, antimatter-based energies we didn't have names for, billions of times more powerful than anything humanity could ever build, and they were aimed at something. One of those filaments was moving through the Oort cloud of that star system, approaching its sun, and whoever lived there was fighting back. They had weapons that shattered pieces of the structure the size of planets. We watched it happen. We watched it break apart and rebuild itself almost immediately, piece by piece, faster than it could be destroyed. After less than a week, the explosion stopped. They had run out of ammunition, and the thing kept moving. We watched it reach the inner system. We watched it find the star. At first, nothing seemed to change, just a star hanging in the void, slightly larger than our own sun. Then a shadow appeared on its edge, then another, and another. They spread slowly, converging, overlapping, until they formed a pattern none of us could immediately identify. And then one of my colleagues said what we were all thinking but were afraid to say. They looked like leaves, dark, oblong shapes, arranged in a web of thin connecting lines, spreading across the face of the star until the light was gone. And then we understood the familiar elements we detected: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, magnesium. These are the building blocks of chlorophyll. It wasn't a megastructure. It wasn't a civilization's engineering project. It was a plant, a living organism so vast it stretched across light years of space, growing from star to star, wrapping around them the way ivy wraps around a tree, feeding on their light. The filaments weren't wires or conduits. They were stems, branches. It had been growing through the galaxy for who knows how long, consuming suns the way a forest consumes sunlight. Any life orbiting those stars would be left in permanent darkness, frozen or consumed entirely. The room was silent. No one spoke for a long time. Then a young astronomer at the far end of the room cleared his throat. He was looking at his screen. His voice was barely steady when he said it. A new tendril had formed, leaving the most recently devoured system, moving outward, and its heading was already calculated. It was pointing directly at our sun. We had run the numbers on the speed it travels. We had watched it overwhelm a civilization thousands of years more advanced than us, one that threw everything they had at it and barely slowed it down. 27 years, that's what we have. I know I'll probably be found for posting this. I know what that might mean, but I've sat with this for too long, and I can't carry it alone anymore. When the sky starts to change, when the sun begins to dim at its edges, and no one on television can explain why, I needed you to know that someone tried to warn you. I just hope it matters. I don't know why I'm telling you this now. Maybe it's because my dad died last week, and ever since then, something in the back of my mind has been slowly unlocking, like a door that was bolted shut for years, and someone just quietly turned the handle. I've lived in Scottsdale, Arizona for 15 years. I have a normal job, a normal apartment, a normal life. But before all of that, before any of this, there was a place called Point Pine, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to forget it. I grew up there, the first 10 years of my life. A small town buried deep inside a dense forest, surrounded by trees in every direction, no highways, no signs pointing toward it, no easy way in or out. And here's the thing I could never shake. Even as a kid, I had no idea where it actually was, what state, what region, whether it was even in the United States at all. All I knew was its name, Point Pine, and that we left the summer after my 10th birthday, and my parents never, ever spoke of it again. They didn't just avoid it, they acted like it never existed, like Point Pine was a word that had been quietly erased from our family's dictionary. I caught on fast. You do when you're a kid and you can feel something heavy in the air. I stopped asking questions, and for 25 years, I kept that promise to myself, until now. My dad passed away 8 days ago, and my mum, she hasn't said a single word since, not one. She didn't cry at the funeral, she didn't call family, she just quietly packed up a small box of his things and sent it somewhere, wouldn't tell me where, but somehow I already know. I think she sent him back to Point Pine, so I'm going to tell you what I remember, the things I locked away so deep, I almost convinced myself they were dreams, because something about finally saying it out loud feels like the only way to make sense of any of it. Point Pine had rules. Every town has rules, sure, but not like this. There was a bakery in town, the Point Pine Bakery. The owner was a man named Mr. Calloway, tall, thin, always in the same white apron. And here's the thing about Mr. Calloway. Every single time you walked through that door, he already knew what you were going to order. Before you said a word, he'd just start putting it together with a small nod, like the question had already been answered somewhere else. The kids had theories. We always do. Some said he was a mind reader. Some said he had cameras everywhere. But the adults never seemed surprised by it. They just paid, dropped their old baby clothes into the wooden box by the register. Yes, that was the tip, not money. An old piece of clothing you'd grown out of, and everyone did it. No one questioned it. That was just Point Pine. Every year on your birthday, you went to the labs, Point Pine Labs, right there on the corner of Main and Ridgewood, with the frosted glass windows you couldn't see through. Annual blood work, no explanation given, no results shared. You just went in, held out your arm, and went home. My parents always went quiet on those mornings, the kind of quiet that tells you not to speak. And then there was the alarm. Every single morning at 8:13 a.m., not 8, not 8:15, 8:13 exactly, a sound like a wailing siren would blast out of speakers mounted all over town, on poles, on rooftops, on trees, and the second it went off, parents would run, not walk, run, pulling kids out of beds like the walls were about to come down. I used to lie awake some mornings, just waiting for it, counting the seconds, and it never once came a minute early or a minute late. 8:13, every single morning. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't up. I never found out, and I think that was the point. But none of that, none of it, comes close to the parade. The Point Pine monthly parade happened once a month. No fixed date. You never knew when it was coming, and the rule, the most serious, most enforced rule in the entire town, was that you could not watch it, not from the street, not from a window, not on any screen. When the parade came through, you went inside, you locked the door if you could find one, and you kept your eyes down until it was over. You always knew it was starting the same way. The singing, a chorus of voices would rise up out of nowhere, not from any one direction, but from everywhere at once. The trees, the buildings, the ground beneath your feet. It sounded like a hymn or a lullaby that had been stretched into something wrong, something that shouldn't have lasted as long as it did. When you heard the first note, you had 5 minutes. 5 minutes to get somewhere with a lock. And in Point Pine, locks were rare. You had the schools, a back room at the bar, and the walk-in fridge at the pizza shop on Elm. Those were your options, and most people ran. My best friend growing up was a kid named Cole, 13 years old, taller than most of the adults in our grade, fearless in the way that only kids who haven't been hurt yet can be. And one August, Cole had an idea. He wanted to watch the parade. I know what you're thinking. But when you're 10 years old and someone tells you absolutely never do this thing, you want to do that thing. So we made a plan. We'd hide in the tree line near the Point Pine Library and wait, however long it took. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of hanging out near that library, pretending to read on the steps, waiting for the singing to start. And then one afternoon, in the 3rd week, it did. The music rose up all around us. Cole grabbed my arm, and we ran into the trees, staying low, finding a spot where we could see a sliver of road through the branches. Everyone else sprinted for the schools. We watched them go, and then we waited. Cole was quiet. That alone was unusual. Cole was never quiet, but he stood completely still, with his eyes fixed on the road, and I could feel something shift in the air around us, a pressure, like the temperature had dropped 5 degrees in 30 seconds. "I can see it," he whispered. I tried to straighten up to get a better look. I was always the shorter one, always. "I can't see anything," I hissed. "Shh." Cole's voice had changed. Something in it had changed. I shifted left, trying to find an angle, and that's when Cole dropped. He just went down, fast, hit the leaves in the fetal position, arms wrapped over his head. "Cole," I breathed. "What did you?" He grabbed my ankle and yanked me down hard. "You don't want to look at it." His voice was barely a sound. "You do not want to look at it." I had known Cole since we were 5 years old. I had never once heard him sound like that. The singing was getting louder. Close now, very close. And then I heard something underneath the chorus, a voice that didn't belong to any choir, a voice that sounded like it was coming from right beside me. "Cody," I froze. "Cody, look at us." It sounded like a girl. It sounded like Reed, my sister's friend, who'd been chosen for the parade that month. Her voice was calm, almost sweet, like she was just calling me to come inside for dinner. "Don't look," Cole whispered from the ground. "Do not look." I pressed my back against a tree and shut my eyes. The voice said my name a few more times, and then I heard something else underneath it, a sound I couldn't name then and still can't name now. Wet, rhythmic, like something feeding. And Cole started to cry. He didn't sob, he didn't make a scene, he just cried quietly on the forest floor while whatever was out on that road continued passing by. I kept my eyes shut until the singing faded back into the trees, until I heard the doors of Point Pine opening again, until ordinary sounds returned. I reached down and put a hand on Cole's shoulder. "It's over," I said. "We can get up." Cole didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly, he pushed himself to his knees. He kept his head down. "Cole?" He didn't look up. "Cole, what happened?" When he finally lifted his face toward me, I will never unsee what I saw, where his eyes had been. There were just dark, bleeding holes, clean cuts in the skin around them, like something had removed them carefully. I threw up, right there in the forest. I couldn't stop, and when I finally could, I took Cole's hand and led him out of the trees. A few adults saw us. They got our parents immediately, and the next morning, before the alarm even sounded at 8:13, my family had packed the car and we were on the road. My parents never looked back, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't stop once, just drove until Point Pine was so far behind us it might as well have never existed. And that was that. I never found out what happened to Cole. I never asked. I knew better. The one time my sister tried to write about Point Pine for a school project, our mum found it and burned it in the backyard. That was the last time anyone in our house said the name out loud. Until now, my dad is gone. My mum hasn't spoken a single word. And somewhere, in a town I can't locate on any map, his remains are being delivered to a place that made sure we'd never talk about it. I don't know if Point Pine still exists. I don't know if the monthly parade is still moving through those streets. I don't know what was chosen for the parade that month, or what it did to Reed, or whether Cole ever learned to live without his eyes. What I do know is that my parents were connected to that town long after we left, connected in some way they never explained, never admitted, and never escaped. And now I'm lying here in my apartment in Scottsdale, wondering if whatever kept my dad tied to Point Pine is already looking for me. I can see people's auras. I have been able to since I was a child. And before you click away, I want you to know, I've never told a single person this. Not one. No therapist. No best friend. Not even my wife. I've never used it to make money. Never used it to manipulate anyone. I've carried this quietly for over 30 years, and I'm only saying it now because something happened 2 days ago that I cannot explain. Something that has me sitting in the dark, staring at a pillow. Let me back up. For me, it's not colorful or sparkly the way those new age websites describe it. It's simpler than that, and somehow far more disturbing. Everyone has a light around them, a faint glow, and within that light, I can see who they are. Not their personality, not their career, not what they had for breakfast. I can see their morality. The brighter and more transparent the light, the better the person. The darker and more opaque, the worse. Most people fall somewhere in between, what I'd call dim, neither good nor evil, just human. And honestly, that's comforting, because the truly dark ones are rare. I'd estimate maybe 15% of people carry genuine darkness. The rest lean toward the light.
I figured this out around age 8. My father's light was brighter than my mother's.
He was more patient, more gentle, more forgiving. My mother wasn't a bad person, not even close. But the difference was visible to me, even as a kid. Teachers with bright auras were kinder. Kids with dark ones were the ones starting fights, stealing lunch money, hurting smaller children without a second thought. I've visited prisons. I've been to death metal concerts and Sunday church services. The ratio stays roughly the same everywhere I go. 60% bright, 25 dim, 15 dark. That number never changes no matter where I am, which tells me something important. Evil isn't a product of environment. It runs deeper than that. The brightest person I ever encountered worked as a social worker named Carolyn. She donated a kidney to a near stranger. She adopted a child with severe disabilities. She gave most of her paycheck away. When she walked into a room, even people who had no idea why would soften. They'd smile a little more, speak a little kinder. She shone so intensely that looking directly at her felt almost overwhelming, like staring at something holy. But here's what you need to understand. She didn't scare me. What scared me was standing on a downtown sidewalk at 2 in the morning when I was 20 years old and watching the light around me go dim, not flicker, not fade, disappear. Like something was absorbing it. A man was walking slowly down the street in my direction, and when I finally looked at him, I felt my knees go weak. He was the darkest thing I had ever seen, a silhouette wrapped in shadow that shouldn't have been there. When he looked up and locked eyes with me, he smirked. Not a smile, a smirk, like he knew exactly what I was seeing. 2 weeks later, I saw his face in the newspaper. He had killed his ex-wife and their 2 children. That was the worst I had ever seen, until 2 days ago. I fell in love with a woman named Rachel about 1.5 years ago. She was sharp, funny, completely herself. Her light was solid, warm, not blinding, but steady, reliable, the kind of light that makes you feel safe just being near it. She got pregnant, we got married, we were building something, a life, a family. We were genuinely, deeply happy. 2 mornings ago, my phone buzzed while I was making coffee. Her text said, "It's happening, come to the hospital." I sat in traffic for 45 minutes. I circled the parking garage twice. I ran through the wrong entrance and had to double back. A nurse finally pointed me to the right room. I burst through the door, and Rachel looked up at me with the most exhausted, most beautiful smile I have ever seen in my life. The doctor, a man whose aura nearly filled the room with warmth, turned to me and said, "Congratulations, it's a boy." He held my son up, and all the light in the room disappeared. I don't mean it dimmed. I don't mean it got a little darker. I mean the world went dim, like a power outage in my eyes. The darkness coming off that tiny 7-pound baby was so total, so complete, so absolute, that I could barely see him through it. I started crying. Rachel reached for my hand. She thought they were tears of joy. I let her believe that. I keep thinking about that man on the sidewalk, that murderer. The darkness around him was the worst I'd ever seen in 30 years of seeing this. And my son's aura is 1,000 times worse than his. What does a person have to become to be 1,000 times worse than a man who slaughtered his entire family? We've been home for 2 days now. The hallway leading to his room is darker than the rest of the house. I don't mean the lights are off. I mean the actual air in the hallway looks different to me, heavier, like something is breathing in there and not letting the light back out. My wife knows something is wrong. She keeps looking at me, the way you look at someone you're not sure you recognize anymore. She thinks I'm having regrets about fatherhood. I wish that were true. I genuinely wish that were all this was. 20 minutes ago, I stood over his crib. He was sleeping, so small, so quiet, and I had a pillow in my hands. I couldn't do it. I couldn't finish it. I set the pillow down and walked out. But here is the thought I cannot shake, the one that keeps looping through my mind no matter what I do. What if someone had known? What if the fathers of history's worst monsters had been given a warning this clear, this undeniable, and they had done nothing? Would they have had the strength to act on what they knew? Could a father really do that? Should he? I'm back at my desk now. I can see the door to his room from where I'm sitting. The hallway is darker than it was an hour ago. I swear it is. And I just look down at my hands while typing this. There's a light around them. It's grey, dim. Maybe it was always dim. Maybe this is what I was always meant to be. The arbiter, the one in between, who doesn't get to choose right or wrong, only which horror to live with. I'm looking at the pillow on the chair beside me. My hands aren't shaking anymore.